oftentimes I have people coming in and their marriage is blown to pieces. And then they're like, Amy, fix it, right?
You're listening to the Therapist to Millions podcast, where we get under the skin and into the brains of the world's leading therapists with Dr. Susan Spicer and myself, Damien Mark Smith, as we delve into the world of all kinds of effective therapies with fascinating and challenging cases, plus marketing tips and what's really working in mental health right now. Hello and welcome to the Therapist to Millions podcast, where we get under the skin and into the brains of therapists around the globe. And today, very special guest, Amy Wilhelmi, who has over 15 years of experience working with children, couples, families, and the LGBTQ community. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist in Illinois and Wisconsin. She believes in understanding the whole person and complex relationship dynamics and abides by the mind-body-spirit approach to care. She's going to fit in perfectly in this show. And Amy is the author of Make Mental Gains, 12 Ways to Create a Formula for Success in Your Belief System, Life, and Business. So Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about the types of therapy that you do, and also, what parts of your story generated that?
Sure. So I am, like you said, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. So the practice that I built, I employ therapists at the practice. We are primarily family structural oriented. So we see individuals, couples, adults, children, adolescents, and then within the practice, obviously we do therapy, but then I also do divorce mediation. And then I'm an EMDR therapist, which is a treatment for trauma.
Fantastic.
So how I got here, I guess, is an interesting question. I worked in residential for a long time with very severely traumatized children, ages 5 through 18, and realized very quickly that unfortunately residential is kind of a holding place for kids that they just don't know what to do with behavioral wise. And I was also tasked with being a family therapist to these kids who most of them did not have families. They were in the foster care system. The facility was a level 14, which means it was the step right before juvenile hall. So these kids have gotten kicked out of every other placement possible and ended up here. And again, what I realized very quickly is that, number one, family work is crucial to them getting better. And in family, what that meant to them was any adult that they had a significant connection with, whether that be a foster parent, whether that be a great aunt, whether that be, a coach, a sports coach that maybe they had at one point. So I had to seek out these people and either bring them to the facility, which most of that didn't work. So I ended up going into the homes of these people lots of the time and conducting the work after our residential school times. And the kids, that had that point person, no matter who it was, got significantly better. And then also I realized that there was a missing link in that setting, in that the therapists just weren't really trained to deal with that kind of trauma. So then I sought out the EMDR training, which I think really works.
Yeah, Dr. Susie is a huge component of EMDR.
Yeah.
It's very, very effective. Using
Yeah.
hypotheticals and not any identifying factors, what's the best example of an amazing success story in your practice?
Yeah. So again, because we're family focused, I get calls all the time that are like, hey, can you see my 7-year-old child, right? Or we've even seen a 3-year-old child. And with EMDR, people don't realize that you don't have to necessarily talk a lot. You don't necessarily have to be very verbal. So an example that I didn't even think was possible was I saw this little kid who was 3 years old, had been in a terrible car accident. Physically it was fine, but mentally had a solid sleep schedule. And after this accident, he was just up all night. He would have crying fits, and this was just unlike him in his development. So I actually did EMDR with this child along with play therapy. So we did a lot of sand tray work where, he would play policeman, and there were cars, and he'd want me to be the bad guy, and we'd have kind of this like traumatic sand play action, which helped him kind of work through some of the being afraid from that car accident. And then at the same session, we would do kind of a little bit of EMDR because, as far as time goes, he couldn't tolerate it for very long, right? But I have these sensors for EMDR that are just like when your cell phone's on vibrate. So instead of holding the sensors like I ask adults to do, I stuck them in his socks. And so we would play this like huge scene out in the sand tray when he was, scared, and there was police coming, and there were cars and people, and I was the bad guy. And then turn on the bilateral stimulation. And we did this for probably a month and a half, maybe 6 sessions, and the nightmare stopped. He was sleeping better. He wasn't having outbursts. So I just think it's such an amazing tool, both play therapy and EMDR.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of your biggest challenge, a case has been, you could even dare say a failure. What has been your biggest challenge as a case, but also what did you learn from it, crucially?
Yeah, well, I do couples work as well, right? And I think I just have kind of a general statement about that. Unfortunately, I think in our world, in our mindset about the therapy practice, is we use it in a non-preventative manner. And couples therapy should be used in a preventative manner, right? Like oftentimes I have people coming in and their marriage is blown to pieces, and then they're like, Amy, fix it, right? And I would love it if they would come in and say, I think this is wrong and this is wrong, or maybe we need to work on some communication or whatever before it's blown to bits. So oftentimes, I've had so many failed couples therapy cases because of that, because they just waited too long. They waited until, there was an affair, or there was somebody had already moved out, or, whatever. So, the couples work that came in too late.
I liken that to going to the gym.
Absolutely.
Go to the gym when you're healthy to maintain the health, as opposed to just when you're overweight and at risk of a heart attack. It's the worst time to go.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I say about therapy too. I'm like, why can't we make it just, I go to the gym, I get my green smoothie, I go see my therapist, right?
And that's one of the reasons we actually created the Therapist to Millions is to get therapy into the hands of the people who need it most more often. And I think that's a really crucial point. So thank you for bringing that up. Would you like to grow your practice but don't know where to start? We're now giving away Therapist to Millions for free. Correct. You can learn how to write a best-selling book, how to get yourself a TEDx talk, how to use PLR products, how to set up a podcast, and lots more. And it's all completely free. Head over to therapisttomillions.com and sign up now. And look, if it's different from above, but this is always quite an interesting one to throw in there. What's been your most fascinating or unusual case?
I worked with someone that had DID, and they weren't really even aware that they had DID. It was a caregiver. This person was not very functional in life. Was an adult, about 30, over 30, and just wasn't really able to function on their own. So they had a caregiver. They lived with a family member, and the family member called kind of frantic, like, I don't really know much about this, but some days she's like this person and some days she's like this other person, and I don't know what's going on, and we really need help because it's crazy in here. And so the caregiver brought this person in, and so I actually got to work with all those personalities, which was fascinating.
Yeah, fascinating. Now, in terms of growing your practice, what's been your most successful marketing technique?
Mm. Making videos that I didn't want to do. Yeah, my business partner at the time was like, hey, you need to start, saying these things, kind of what we're talking about,
Mhm.
and just posting them on your social media. And so reluctantly, I started doing it, but I think we live in the age where people want to see you and they want to get to know you and they want to hear you speak and what you have to say. And so you can post all the content in the world or write all the content in the world, but I think that our ability to see and hear and get to know people this way is what works.
Yeah, it's huge. And that's another reason, by the way, we do go out on video as well as audio. So, and we will be starting to put snippets on TikTok, which I learned the other day, by the way, is that has the most traffic of any website in the world. It's now overtaken Google.
I know.
So if you're a
And we all
therapist
thought
and
it
you're
was
on
so
TikTok,
silly
get
in
on
the
it.
beginning, right? We
Yeah.
all thought it was so silly. We were like, oh, those kids with those dances. So,
So tell us a little bit about making mental games, the 12 ways to create a formula for success.
yeah. So it was kind of a book that I launched when I was writing my larger book, which is called Ascension Mentality, which is actually I got my manuscript that is beautifully organized yesterday. So um it was a book before the book. It is a book about just kind of lifestyle practices, and like I just said, kind of what you can do to affect your mental health as far as your lifestyle goes, organizing your life, eating healthier, exercising, going out into nature, making boundaries a priority, carving out your work day, saying no to things, getting enough sleep. So I think a lot of people come in and they're like, I'm depressed or I'm anxious, right? These are kind of common phrases clients use. And I question that. And I say things like, well, how much sleep are you getting? Do you exercise? Tell me about what you're eating. Because if this client says, well, I ate Dunkin' Donuts 5 days this week, and no, I don't exercise. What's exercise? Gross. I'm like, all right, well, let's talk about how there's a direct correlation between your lifestyle habits and your mood and your mental health. And they're like, ah. So I feel like a lot of the times I'm almost doing kind of coaching, like lifestyle coaching, and asking clients to make changes and stick with those changes, the accountability of those changes, because it's not fun, eating healthier or going to the gym or whatever if you're not used to that. But over time, you're going to see such a huge gain in your mental wellness. And so that's really what that book is about.
Can I sow the seeds of an idea here? Can you do a version for kindergarten so that it gets in every school and every kindergarten in the world? Because that is
You know,
so useful.
yeah, you know what? Actually, I sent one. I have a hormone doctor, and I sent one to her, and she's like, my nurse took it, and I was like, where did it go? And she's like, the nurse brought it home and started reading it to her 5-year-old son. So, I like this idea about making a kid specific one, but
Yeah.
it's applicable for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's the name of the next book? What's it called again?
it's called Ascension Mentality.
Oh, nice. I like that.
Mhm.
Now, on the subject of books, what's been your best therapy book you've ever read and why?
Mm. There's this nice thick book that I really like. It's called Becoming Attached. And it really talks a lot about early childhood attachment and how that affects us today. And so I talk a lot about that in leadership spaces. I give a lot of talks to uh, large companies, CEOs, and whatnot. And specifically about how your early attachment and your trauma affects your leadership style. And if you I have a fun fact that if you get a group of high performers into a room, like a group of entrepreneurs, CEOs, whatever, and you ask them a really hard question that they may not want to answer, but even internally, I bet you that they're answering. The question is something like, how many of you had a difficult childhood? And guess what? Most of the hands in that room go up, right? Because there's this driver for people that are very high performing. And
Mhm.
oftentimes it comes from that early childhood
Yeah.
trauma attachment stuff. So my whole shtick with that is like, really, yes, the driver may have gotten you to point A, right? To this high performing place, to this amazing position, to whatever, but that cannot continue to be your driver, because that is what causes burnout.
Yeah.
So we need to identify, like, yes, I've had trauma. We need to work on the trauma, process the trauma, and actually, you're going to be a better leader coming out of that. You're going to be a better boss. You're going to be a better CEO if you unwind that trauma. And I think what people are afraid of in that is, like, number one, obviously facing it, but number two, they're like, but it made me stronger, right? They're afraid of like losing this piece because of processing it. And that's just simply not true. Like in EMDR, I'm always like, you're not going to lose the pieces that work for you. All you're going to do is get rid of the negative crap that's actually holding you back,
Mhm.
because oftentimes these people get to the point where they're like, again, burnt out, running a million miles an hour. I can't do this anymore. And it's really because they haven't let a lot of stuff go.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I think if you're a CEO, if you recognize that in yourself listening to this, we're going to be giving Amy's contact details at the end for you to get in contact with her. What's been your best non-therapy book you've ever read, and why?
That's non-therapy book. Um, this was not written by a therapist, but it's a recent one that I like. It's called Reboot. And it's simply about that. It's about this guy who went on his own journey, of success. He was a very successful, very high performing CEO, got burnt out, and then had to find himself. So the reboot was, he found a practitioner who practiced Buddhism, and he learned some like Buddhism mindfulness stuff. And he really realized what his driver was, which was this early childhood, low socioeconomic status thing where he, grew up pretty poor, and he wanted all of the shiny objects, and he wanted money. And so his driver kind of came out of a place of inadequacy, being not good enough. And then once he kind of unwound that and realized that that's kind of how and where he got to where he was, he started working on it. And then he went out into the world and started teaching people about this.
Nice, I like that. Okay, so what is your top tip for mental health in the world today?
Top tip for mental health. Kind of what I just said, recognize that mental health is should be and is part of lifestyle, right? So I think oftentimes it gets put on the back burner, or people come to mental health therapy for, oh crap, everything's breaking down around me, instead of, hey, I'm going to put this into my weekly practice. I'm going to think about my mental health daily and make it a priority. I think that mental health should be a priority, wellness should be a priority, and that's where we should lead from, instead of the other direction where my life is burning down. Now I need help.
I absolutely love that. And it's so powerful. We maintain our bodies, we maintain our relationships. Why on earth don't we do that with our mental well-being?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds crazy just saying it, actually.
Yeah. It does. And you know what? I've been getting more and more kind of young people in my practice. And young people, I mean like independent, like 20 something year olds. And I feel like that generation is kind of getting it.
Yeah.
I had a client the other day that, on the intake, I'm like, what's going on? And usually they have kind of a long laundry list of stuff that's wrong. And instead she said, you know what? I just felt like I should be doing this because I feel like it's probably good for me. And I was like, high five, 20 something
Yeah.
year old,
Love it.
like, hallelujah, we're getting there.
At
So,
last. Fantastic. And finally, and if you're watching on YouTube, here is
mm,
the one of our exclusive Therapist to Millions t-shirts. They're lovely as well. They're really nice fabric.
yeah,
So Amy, tell us a fact that blows our mind, or tell us a joke that's one of a kind to win an exclusive Therapist to Millions t-shirt.
cool. I'm not very funny, so I have a fact. There is a proven study that the smell of chocolate makes people want to buy romance novels. So sometimes, yeah. So
Wow.
sometimes in bookstores they'll pump like chocolate smell out.
Oh my goodness.
This is proven. Yeah.
That is amazing. Well, that's blown our minds, and you will be getting a Therapist to Millions t-shirt. And for anyone who's listened to last week's one, which we actually recorded yesterday, we're going to be doing the post office run. I was supposed to do it today, but we're going to do it on Monday instead. So you're in luck. You're going to get it next week. So congratulations. Now, finally, how can people contact you and get hold of you, Amy?
Yeah, sure. So the therapy website is www.balancewellnesscollective.com. And then I have my own personal website, which has my books, my speaking events, etc. And that's www.amywilhelmi.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to share your insights with us. It's been an absolute nugget fest of some really interesting stuff in there. And I would love you to get that book into the kindergartens and the nurseries because I think that's
I'll
so,
work
so
on that.
important. Wonderful. Thanks so much for taking the time out with us. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
If you enjoyed this week's episode of the Therapist to Millions podcast, may we invite you to check out our free for life Therapist to Millions online membership course for therapists and coaches who want to grow their business without trading more time for dollars. We've created the world's premier digital marketing resource exclusively for therapists, and it's yours for free for life. Just head over to therapisttomillions.com and sign up now.